Robert Emmons and Mike McCullough have done very important research on the value of appreciation. What they did was they took in a group of people, and here I'm combining a couple of experiments that they conducted together. They took in a group of people and randomly divided them into 4 groups. One group, every night before going to bed, write about at least 5 things for which you're grateful. Big things or little things. Second group, every night before going to sleep, write about at least 5 hassles, bad things in your life. Third group, every night before going to sleep, write about at least 5 things at which you're better than others at, superior to others. And fourth group was the control group, write about any 5 things that happened to you during the day. The variables that he looked at were how happy they were over the 6 months of the study, how optimistic they were, how generous, benevolent, and kind they were toward other people, how successful they were, and finally, how physically healthy they were. In other words, how strong their immune system was. And what they found in the study was that the group that performed the worst was the hassles, bad things group. The group that performed the best, that was happiest, most optimistic, most likely to achieve their goals, most generous and kind toward others, and physically healthiest, was the group that every night before going to sleep wrote at least 5 things for which they're grateful. Big things or little things. Look at the effect that this brief intervention has. How long does it take? 3 minutes to write those things down? Not even. Why does it have such an impact? Because what I'm doing when I write the things for which I'm grateful, when I ask myself the question, what do I appreciate in my life? What am I grateful for in my life? Then I'm focusing on the good in my life. Well, if we think about it in the philosophical level, because when you appreciate the good appreciates. And they got a lot more in their lives, whether it's in their relationships, became more generous and benevolent, whether it was in terms of their success, they got more, it appreciated, whether it was their physical health that appreciated, whether it was their well-being that appreciated. So that's on the philosophical level. But how does it actually work? Psychologically, I practice writing things for which I'm grateful. I practice being a benefit finder. And I don't just practice it in the 3 minutes at night. Because I think about it during the day. Oh, this is something that I'm going to write tonight. And that changes the wiring of my brain. And I become more of a benefit finder. And we saw the incredible benefits of being more of a benefit finder. The key when doing this exercise, and this is very important, often overlooked, is to maintain freshness when we do it. Why? Because what often happens to people who start doing it and doing it regularly is that they begin to take this exercise for granted. Okay, so I have to write the 5 things. Okay, maybe I'll write 6, and they get it over and done with. And what we need to do to maintain freshness is to do it as if we're doing it for the first time. How? What are some techniques that are useful? Sonia Lubimirsky talks about doing it weekly, and she has actually shown that people who do it weekly benefit as well. So whether it's around the Friday night dinner table, the lasagna, or whether it's every Sunday when the week starts that I do it, but once a week, doing it can have an impact. It's easier to cultivate the habit of gratitude if I do it daily. But even doing it weekly, if that helps us maintain freshness, good enough. Introduce variety. For example, even if I write the same things over and over again, there can still be variety. So if I write Eliav our baby down, today I can focus on the new tooth that just came out. The following day I can focus on his smile. The following day when I write the same thing, I can focus on the way he walks like Charlie Chaplin. And write about different things. I don't need to repeat the same things every day. But I begin to look for things to write about. I become, quite literally, a benefit finder because I become a benefit seeker. And just like a fault finder will find faults in paradise, the benefit finder will always find benefits, even during difficult times. To do it mindfully. What does that mean? It's to really focus on what I'm writing. To think about it perhaps in a slightly different way than I did the day before. If I write about Shirel, then to go and to look at Shirel and to experience this heartfelt positivity as I look at her. Because that is key. If I just write it, it means nothing. Or almost nothing. It's just going through the motion. What we need is intention to experience the experience. So it may not take me a minute, but 3 minutes, but the benefits are immense because if I do it on a regular basis, I'm regularly bringing up my positivity ratio. And finally, another important tip, and this is from Professor Stephen Coslin. We visualize what it is that we are writing down. Why? One of the differences when it comes to thinking between very young kids and older adults is that when kids hear of a word, when, for example, they think of mommy, they visualize mommy, so the word travels back to our visual cortex and then again to our prefrontal cortex. That's the process that kids go through when they talk, when they think of words. As adults, we circumvent going back to our visual cortex and coming back, which is why we can think quicker, faster. Our brain is more efficient, which is a good thing. However, we also lose something, because this is also the reason why a child experiences life freshly, because everything for them is imagined, is alive in their minds. But we can do that when we want to. If I write down about Amir, my best friend, I can visualize and think about Amir, and that makes it a lot more personal, it makes it more heartfelt. Now, I've been doing this exercise for more than 10 years. I started doing it on the 19th of September, 1999. And I've been doing it every day since. I started doing it before the study even came out, after Oprah, in one of her programs, talked about keeping a gratitude journal. When in 2002 the study came out, I didn't need it to tell me how useful and important it is. I want to read to you what I wrote last night. All right. God, Tamush, Tami, David, Shirel, Eliav, Karen, Tami, Udi, and Shai, and the rest of the production team that put together this wonderful conference. Thank you. And spicy salmon. I had spicy salmon at the IDC cafeteria yesterday, which was amazing. So I write big things and little things that repeat themselves every day, and things that are unique to that particular day. And if I write the same thing, because there are some things that I repeat time and time again, I focus on it. I bring heartfelt positivity to it. I think about it in a slightly different light. I visualize it so that it remains fresh. Oprah, once again a consummate benefit finder, had been talking about this for years. Why? Because she knows firsthand how important it is to also focus on the positive in your life. She went through very difficult times, very harsh experiences growing up. And here is what she writes. What you focus on expands. And when you focus on the goodness in your life, you create more of it. Opportunities, relationships, even money flowed my way when I learned to be grateful, no matter what happened in my life. While things don't always happen for the best, some people are able to make the best of things that happen. And when we appreciate the good appreciates. When you focus on the positive in your life, the positive expands. It's not just about being grateful in solitude. It's also about being grateful to others. Marty Seligman, in one of his classes, tried an exercise with his students and got them to write a gratitude letter to someone that they feel they need to thank. Someone perhaps they haven't seen for years, or someone that they haven't thanked enough. And they wrote this letter and then ideally went and delivered the letter, actually read the letter to the person. The effect that he reported in his class stunned him, that he ended up doing research on it, which showed remarkable effects. I've been doing it in my class ever since the time I started to teach. And some of the things that I see are mind-boggling, or should I say, heart-warming. For example, one of my students went to the coach. She was a basketball player, a coach that she had in high school. And she read him the letter, and she said, after reading the letter, the coach looked 10 years younger. Or one of my students wrote a letter to his dad. My student told me that his dad hugged him for the first time in almost 20 years. Roommates wrote it to one another. And if there was conflict before, that helped mend, bridge differences between them as a result of focusing on what works, on being grateful. Because when we express gratitude, when we do not take for granted the good, when we appreciate the good appreciates. Try it. Take time to reflect, to think about a person for whom you're grateful. This is not just a thank you note. Oh, thank you for attending our wedding. It was lovely to see you. That does not count. It's a well thought out letter. It's imagining it, thinking about what that person really means to you and putting it to paper. And after taking the time to think about it, you can deliver it through a letter by sending it, or phone if you need to speak, or ideally in person. Either give it to them and let them read it when you're there, or read it to them if you feel comfortable doing so. In the research that Seligman, Peterson, and others conducted, it showed to have the largest boost in well-being after writing this letter. Now that well-being remained, but after a while, after about a month, went back to where it was before, which is why it is important to do it on a regular basis. If you can do it weekly, wonderful. But even if you do it monthly, put time aside to express gratitude to someone who means a lot to you. Now here is the thing about this intervention, which Sonia Lubemirsky illustrated. This has a positive effect, of course, on the person receiving it, and it has a positive effect on the person writing it, even if the letter is not delivered. either because I don't want, for whatever reason, to deliver it, or because I can't, because the person passed away. But just writing this letter in and of itself has a significant impact on our well-being. Why? Because what we're doing when we're writing a letter like this, we're being benefit finders. What we're doing is we're looking for good things actively. And seek and you shall find. And we find them. And we appreciate them, those things, and that person. And we have more good in our lives. We'd have much better relationships. Tommy and I, my wife and I, on a regular basis, tell one another what we appreciate. I say to her, Tommy, what I appreciate about you is. And then she says to me, Tal, what I appreciate about you is. Now, when we started, I started it, I must admit. When we started it, she thought, I'm looking for the scientific word, she thought I was weird. I think weird is the right word. But you know, I did it, we did it, and now we do it with earnestness. Not with cynicism. Why? Because our relationship is too important for us to take for granted, or we don't want it to depreciate, we want it to grow, to bloom, to flourish. I do it with my children on a regular basis before they go to sleep. I ask them, what was fun for you today? And they tell me, and then they ask me, Abba, what was fun for you today? Cultivating the habit of gratitude. Focusing also, not only, also on what works. I want to end this lecture with a short story about a person who can truly teach us to appreciate, who can teach us to truly see and hear. Helen Keller. In her wonderful article, 3 Days to See, she writes about what she would do if she had gotten her eyesight for 3 days, if she had gotten her hearing for 3 days. How would she live these 3 days? It's the most important document that exists today that I know of on benefit finding. If you want to become more of a benefit finder, go on Google, look for 3 Days to See, print it out and keep it next to you. Put it on the fridge. Read it and reread it. And in that article, 3 Days to See, Helen Keller talks about an encounter with her friend. She lived in Cambridge, just outside Boston at the time, where there were many woods back in the beginning of the 20th century. And her friend came to visit her and then went for a walk outside. And an hour later, when her friend came back, Helen Keller asked her, so what did you see? And her friend said to Helen Keller, well, nothing of note. And Keller writes about this in her article. I wondered how it was possible to walk for an hour through the woods and see nothing of note. I, who cannot see, find hundreds of things. The delicate symmetry of a leaf, the smooth skin of a silver birch, the rough, shaggy bark of a pine. I, who am blind, can give one hint to those who see. Use your eyes as if tomorrow you will have been stricken blind. Hear the music of voices, the songs of a bird, the mighty strains of an orchestra, as if you would be stricken deaf tomorrow. Touch each object as if tomorrow your tactile sense would fail. Smell the perfume of flowers, taste with relish each morsel as if tomorrow you could never taste or smell again. Make the most of every sense, glory in all the facets and pleasures and beauty which the world reveals to you. There are so many pleasures and beauties and treasures and miracles unfolding day in and day out, right around us and within us. And yet we so often fail to appreciate them, because the stars shine every night, these envoys of beauty. Because my partner has been with me for the last 20 years. Because the children are going to come home from school again. And yesterday they came home from school, and the day before. And because I have walked to the grocer in the same way for the past 7 years, or because I've taken the same road to my office as I have over the last 3 years. And yet, it may be the same walk, but it's never the same experience. And at every moment in my life, I have a choice. One of the most important choices that I can make at every moment is to open my senses, my eyes, my ears, my tactile sense, my smell, or to shut them down and to take that thing, the familiar, for granted. And the consequences of that choice are immense in terms of my happiness, in terms of my optimism, in terms of my physical health, in terms of my relationships, in terms of my success. Because when I appreciate the good appreciates. Every night before going to bed, I write down at least 5 things for which I'm grateful. Tonight, one of the things that I'm certainly going to write down is the privilege that I've had to be here with you. I'm so happy that you're taking this course. Thank you.